Peace, family. You're listening to Heru Maa Amen-Ra, and this is the Metunetir Decoded. So today we're going to briefly cover the two fundamental aspects of man's being. We will cover a few inserts from the pages of Metunetir Volume 4, Preface, which writes about the self and the not-self. So to understand the essence of Kemetic religion and spirituality, you must understand the fundamental makeup of man. We are all aware of the two distinctive opposite aspects in our being. Some of the events in man's life are willed and others are involuntary. We must take responsibility for all willed activities and must consequently identify with them. In other words, willed activities proceed from us. On the other hand, involuntary activities are, as the word says, not willed, and we can therefore not take responsibility for them. Now, like I said earlier, there are two aspects of man's being, which are the self, which is who we identify with, and that is consciousness and will. And then there's the not self, which is who we shouldn't identify with, but the majority of us do out of ignorance. So the not self is unconsciousness and involuntary activity. Alright? So when we will something to take place, we are going no further than declaring a potential act. That is why most people have difficulties realizing their will, establishing and changing habits, so on. The will and its realization belong to the different parts of your being. You, the self, wills, while the not self, which is the spirit, is in charge of its execution. So we all know how to act as self, but hardly anything about the spirit. It and its activities operate outside of consciousness, which is our self. The reason that the self cannot carry out its intentions is because it is devoid of energy and matter. The spirit is the part that manifests events because it is composed of energy and matter. So basically, one is the passive and one is the active. The passive being the will and consciousness, and the active being the spirit, the part of your being that actually does or possesses the energy or acts. Right? So by now you should understand that the self is devoid of energy and matter, but it potentially acts. And the not self is composed of energy and matter, and is also the realization of the acts. So the self is devoid of energy and matter, and is therefore a unit, eternal and infinite, uncreated. There is nothing that can be divided, multiplied, limited, extended, etc. These qualities were subsumed in the Kemetic term attuned, which is the Godhead. It is this aspect of being that in reference to God is referred to the designation of the Supreme Being. Alright? To carry out the dictates of the Godhead, the Spirit makes use of the number of faculties that compose it. These are the Netaru. In the Kemetic tradition, Devas; in the Hindu, archangels; in the Hebrew and Christian, etc. Alright? So basically, what does this all mean? It's simply saying that the Godhead, which is the self, and the spirit are interdependent of one another. One is passive and one is active. So, in other words, and what happens when you violate the interdependence between things? You get what? Westernized religion or Western history. Alright? And history repeats itself. The majority of Westernized religion, you can categorize it as, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and all of the above. Alright? So we'll leave it at that today, and we'll pick up tomorrow where we left off at. All right, so stay tuned, family. We got a lot more to come. All right, peace and love.